Luke, what are we starting with this week?
Texting my dad.
Well, we can if you want. Everyone get your phones.
Everyone
Start
text
texting.
That's what
Luke.
I was doing, sorry. What are we starting this week with? Corey? I nearly called you Amy. What's going on? What's going
He's
on?
Amy now. He's
Am
Amy
I
now.
okay?
Hello, I'm Amy.
Hi, Amy.
No, so we're starting this week with an email.
Oh, a wee email.
A wee email. Well, actually, it's quite a long email. Okay, here's a question for you, Luke.
Yeah.
So this is from Star Major. What an awesome name.
Star Major.
Star Major. This says, hey, SCI guys. So I've been listening to your podcast since it was announced, but I never had a good enough question/story to send in. But after I listened to Luke's episode on brains, I had a thought.
Wow.
How do the two halves of your brain work if you're ambidextrous? I'm quite weird. I am predominantly right-handed. I use my right hand to write and stuff, but my left hand for many other things. Example, computer mouse, using scissors and cutting things, using chopsticks, etc. Anyway, that part was unnecessary. Love the podcast. Star. What do you think, Luke?
I'm going to find out for you right now, Star.
I wanted to put you on the spot.
Well, I don't know the answer. That's why I was going to research it.
I mean, if you're left-handed, the devil is obviously inside of you.
I think the reason why the idea that left-handed people are like in some way wrong or evil is because generally like the brains are swapped sides. The left and right hemispheres are swapped if you're left-handed. And I think that means that because we normally would use our left brain to decode other people's left brains, but if they're swapped, our left brain is decoding a right brain and our right brain is decoding a left brain, which it's not used to doing and it's not developed to do. And so that would give a certain amount of incongruity to like how we're trying to figure out what people think, because their left side will be thinking something we'd expect a right side to think, and their right would be thinking something that we'd expect a left to think.
So it's spooky.
Rachel doesn't know they're right from left.
I actually do.
Okay.
I do. I'm very good at that.
So, studies have found that people who have a preference for using their right hand tend to have brains in which the left hemisphere is dominant. Scientists have found that neither hemisphere is dominant in brains of people who are ambidextrous. There you go.
That's cool.
That's why. So like people have like a dominant left or right eye, and you can do this by like moving your finger away from your head and closing one eye and closing the other eye and seeing which one is the one that you think your finger is at. And in somebody with an ambidextrous hand choice,
It's not a choice.
okay, sure. The brain, well, they make the choice. Anyway, their brain would be like more balanced than ours, supposedly.
So they're all Libras, is what you're saying.
No.
I agree. You're a Libra too.
Libra,
I'm a
yeah.
Libra.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Oh, God, just the best.
Us too.
Start the show.
Hello and welcome to the SCI Guys, where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Amy, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Not Jam, and Luke Cutford.
Hi, Not Jam.
Hey.
How you doing, Not
I'm
Jam?
doing all right.
Introduce yourself.
I am Rachel Kiki.
Hi, Rachel Kiki.
Hi.
How you doing, Rachel Kiki?
Doing all right, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, well, good. We're happy to have you. This week, we're talking about in vitro fertilization,
Yes, we are.
and also the father of many children.
Who happens to be...
My grandfather.
Yay!
I didn't actually know it was your grandfather.
It is my grandfather, yes.
Wow.
I know.
Amazing.
I
So
know.
do you want to give us a little lowdown on your grandpappy?
So my grandfather, something we discovered recently, actually. So it's not something we've known for a very long time, but my grandfather was a man called Berthold Wiesner, and he was an Austrian Jewish. He was a psychologist. He did a lot of things, and
He definitely did a lot.
He
of
did
things.
a lot of things. He did a lot of things, and he is responsible for fathering up to, well, we think around 600, but maybe more children through artificial insemination through a clinic that he ran in the 1940s.
That's bang on.
And it was his sperm that was being used.
Crucially, yeah, for people who haven't got from that story yet, against the will of the prospective mothers.
Well, not against the will, without the knowledge of
This is the thing.
Against the will.
But this is the thing, is that it because there is so little information on this, and because it was so long ago, and because we're only discovering all of this now because of these DNA tests, which I'll go into how we found it later. But we don't know whether it was always against their will. Some of them may have thought that it was the frozen sperm of a partner, like the mothers going in, that was being used. Some of them didn't care whose it was, so it did end up being his. So I suppose it was without consent because they weren't aware of the scale of it. But
so I do have some information on this, although I'm glad you said he was an Austrian Jew, because I have heard so many. So there were a lot of articles which point back to one article, and in one of the articles it says he was Australian. And in all of the others, they just assume that he's British.
Strange.
Because the original one that broke it was in 2012 with the Telegraph. And they gave very little information. They just said, this man did this thing in Britain at this time. And people have just extrapolated out from that. So I'm glad we've got an almost first-hand source.
yes,
to
he was
hear about-
definitely an Austrian Jew.
Okay, good.
Very, very, very Jewish. I say that because my dad did the DNA test recently, and not knowing that this was his father, he thought that his father was the man who had raised him.
Oh, wow.
The guy who grew up with my grandfather, but he died like 10 years ago. So, yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing thing to find out.
It is crazy. It is crazy because my dad grew up as an only child. So he did this DNA test, and it came up on the website that he had all these half siblings. So because I don't know if you've read or saw about Jonathan Wiesner, he was the son of Berthold, who was raised with him. So he was raised as his son. And not long ago, Jonathan gave his DNA to one of these websites so that everyone else, so they could find out. So now loads of people are joining sort of every day, and we're finding new links all the time because people are doing these DNA tests and coming up with all of these links, and it's crazy.
I'm just so worried that a couple will find out that they're both.
Oh my God.
That's the worst thing. Look, we'll get into it later. We'll get into that later. Why don't we start off with what IVF is? If you're sitting there confused about what IVF is, don't worry. We've got the answers for you. Luke, what's IVF?
In vitro fertilization means that the little egg from the female tummy is... What's the actual word?
Tummy?
Yes. The little egg from the female tummy
Just go with it.
is taken out. And it's
Ovaries, maybe?
ovaries, yeah, that's it. Tummy, ovaries, potato.
Same thing.
It's taken out and it's fertilized outside the body in like a scientific environment, like in a test tube. You know what I mean? I just mean it's...
Can I just remind you that scientists listen to our show?
Well, the opposite
We're all
of
scientists.
the opposite of in the vagina is in the scientific environment.
The vagina is the scientific environment.
No, no.
It can be.
Can be.
How?
Depends if you're doing science there or not.
We could be doing science.
Little people in the vagina, like, welcome to our lab. Anyway,
Our labia.
It doesn't even happen.
Brilliant.
Anyway, it doesn't even happen in the vagina. So, anyway, so the little tummy egg is taken out, and some sperm is taken out of the peenie, and they are introduced together. And
Hello, very nice to meet you.
lots of the embryos are constructed outside of the vagina or not in the person. And then the ones that are like desirable are put back in the female and then are grown. Usually a few of them are grown and only a few of them like attached, only one or two attached to the cell wall.
The uterine wall.
The uterine wall. Sorry, not the cell
Humans
wall.
don't have cell
This
walls.
has been I mean, they do in every cell of their body.
No, they don't.
They don't have cell walls.
No, they've got membranes. A cell wall is
I didn't pay attention to anything in biology. I'm so sorry.
I didn't even do
As has
biology.
been shown by this last minute.
A quick side note. Animals don't have cell walls. They've only got membranes. A cell wall is like a tough outer layer. So it's only really plants that have that.
Okay. That's something for biology GCSE if you're studying that.
Yeah, if you're studying that, look to the future. We might be doing a little bit of something. A little something. Yeah.
So, in vitro fertilization.
Oh, dear God.
Basically, fertilization that happens outside the body in
vitro.
a scientific environment.
In vitro.
In vitro.
Which means in glass.
In test tube. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where you get the term test tube baby.
Yeah, one of my friends from school was a test tube baby.
Oh, really?
Cool.
Yeah, I'd written this entire episode and I got to the end and I remembered, oh yeah, that guy.
Were they weird? I don't know if this was any cause of the
No, he's not.
IVF.
Well, look.
itself. Could be.
I can't stop thinking about when mummy test tube and daddy test tube love each other very much. They make a test tube baby.
Oh, and it's just tiny test tube.
Tiny test tube.
Tiny test tube.
Grows
So
into a
does
big
one
test tube.
test tube go into the hole of the other?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds awful.
Are they
Yeah.
I don't know.
Why don't we just move on?
Yeah.
So IVF is one of many techniques that are available for people who can't make a baby good. That was really insensitive. If you've got fertility problems, you can use IVF in order to have a baby. And as Luke was saying, during IVF, you look very tired after that.
I
You
am.
look like
That was stressful.
took a lot out of you.
It's a lot of pressure.
Thinking about those.
You also look like
Babies.
a newspaper. You look like a newspaper boy from like.
If you're not watching online, I'm wearing like a chimney sweep hat. What's it called?
Like a little Oliver Twist
Flat cap?
hat.
Flat
It's kind
cap.
of not
Yeah.
really.
Well, it's not really a
sort of
flat
a bubbly hat.
Yeah.
Good day, me love.
It's what Dick Van Dyke would
I'll
wear.
do the rest of the podcast
It's kind
in
of
this
like a
voice, shall
farmer,
I?
doesn't he?
IVF happens outside the vagina.
Why is he Australian now?
Happens outside the vagina.
The
it does.
vagina, mate?
Yeah, it does.
It happens outside the vagina, did you say?
Take it out the vagina.
Yeah, what do you do with it then?
Put it in a test tube.
I put it in a test tube.
Yeah, now it's
What-
going a bit New Zealand now,
How's it
isn't
gonna?
it?
Yeah, it's New Zealand.
Yeah, I
to be
think we
honest.
should
You
put
can-
Traveling around
We
the
should
world
stop
the
with
sperm in a
vaginas.
test tube.
Okay. So yeah, an egg is removed during IVF. It's
Lots of
removed.
them, actually.
Well, yes, but we're going to follow the story of one little egg.
Okay.
Little egg.
Yes,
Onwards.
they're very little. In fact, you can see them though.
Not that little then.
Well, they're big for.
I've seen smaller.
They're little for
No,
every.
you haven't.
Damn
That's
it.
the point.
Damn it.
It's like-
It's one of the smallest things the human eye can see.
yeah, it's so
Try me.
it's little for things, but for cells, it's quite big.
Ah, yes.
Okay, because you can see it. It's about. I think it's about half a millimeter.
Hmm.
Maybe it's smaller than that. Off the top of my head, I
You
can't
got
quite
one
recall.
to show us.
Actually, I've made one of my own. Let me just take it. Look, there you go.
I've
yeah.
seen smaller.
So the egg is removed from the woman's ovaries or
Sorry, females
the
ovaries.
person's ovaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the issue. So I was going to say this before we start. A lot of the time, I'm going to be saying, oh, well, what am I going to be saying?
I mean, female
Female
in terms
works.
of the biological
Yeah.
term for female.
So I'm going to be saying female a lot for this. Bear in mind, if you're to look it up online, it will say man and woman because the NHS hates trans people.
It's true.
Not, you heard it from
I
here.
don't think that.
They hate them, Luke.
I don't think that's quite
They're
correct.
transphobic, the entire NHS.
I mean, they do offer like
Conspiracy.
trans help services on the NHS.
Yeah, but
Sounds a
they're-
bit transphobic to me.
yeah, but imagine the wait
I'm
time.
not saying it's correct. I'm just saying I don't think it's
You don't
because
think
they
that trans
actively
people are
despise
correct?
trans people. No,
Wow.
no.
This is
I
disgusting.
just think you should be careful with what you say. And if you accuse the bedrock of our society of hating trans people, that's quite inflammatory
No,
and inaccurate. It was just written a while ago. That's all it is.
that is true. The NHS is not transphobic. In fact, we have an NHS representative here with us today.
I'm not an NHS representative. I'm
But
just
you are
wearing an
wearing
You
NHS
got it on the hat.
hat.
You got it on the
Yes,
hat.
I do
For all
have it
those
on the hat.
listening, Kiki is wearing an NHS hat
It's
right
true.
now. Where'd you get that hat?
It is
NHS?
my housemate, Declan's.
Really?
It is
Where did
not mine.
Declan get that
I have
hat?
no idea. It turned up in the
NHS?
house the other day, and now I'm wearing it. The NHS, probably.
Oh,
Yes.
that does make sense.
Deep dark depths of the NHS.
They're spending our taxpayers' money on these stupid hats.
This is where our taxes go. On my head.
The egg is removed from the person's ovaries.
How?
What?
How?
Big claw.
Oh,
Ah.
gosh.
Scratchy
It's-
claw.
You don't want to know. It's not very nice.
Okay.
I'll tell you later on more exactly how. This is just an
Okay.
overview, but
Okay.
it's not very nice. So the egg is removed from the person's ovaries and fertilized with sperm in a laboratory. The fertilized egg, which is an embryo, as Luke said, is then put back in the person, and it grows and develops there, much like a normal embryo would. So it's very straightforward. So you can use anyone's eggs, really. Find anyone's eggs, not chickens.
Out in the wild, go and find someone's eggs.
Yeah, just pick them up.
Just go and pick them up.
Pick them up from
You
the
can use
nest.
anyone's eggs, you know.
You can use any. Well,
Corey said it on the podcast. You got it.
Oh, you got me. Consensually, you can use anyone's eggs and anyone's sperm. It doesn't really matter. Just pop them in there.
That's definitely the attitude Rachel's granddad
but-
took.
So you
Corey
use.
said you can use anyone's sperm, so I'll just use my own 600 times.
God,
Yes,
he
you
was
decided
really
this,
having a
what,
good
like
time.
70,
wasn't he?
80 years before I said those words.
Time's not real, man.
Oh, dear God.
You just validated Gertrude's behavior, or whatever his name is.
Gertrude.
Bertold.
Did you just call him Gertrude?
Gertrude, I called him.
Gertrude.
Sounds like something J.K. Rowling would have named a goblin.
The thing about with IVF, right? It's okay. IVF and artificial insemination,
Yes.
the same thing.
Slightly different things.
Right.
So artificial insemination. So IVF does involve artificial insemination,
Right.
technically.
Right.
But artificial insemination is literally inseminating. a person.
Like they do to cows.
Like with a
Yes, and it was actually
Turkey
developed.
turkey
For,
based
it was
stuff.
developed for cows.
Yeah.
Initially, it was developed for agriculture.
and my grandmother. Sorry, it's just...
Right, moving on. So you can get IVF on the NHS, but there are kind of specific kind of guidelines for who can get it. And if you can't get it on the NHS, you can pay for it, but it costs about up to $5,000 or more.
Up to $5,000 or more.
I'm taking this from the NHS.
The other day, I was watching a tutorial on YouTube about a thing to do with the PlayStation, and it said, this will take anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes. Mine took 30 seconds. What? So between 30 seconds and 20 minutes.
This is one of my least favorite ways of describing anything. Up to amount or more. It doesn't mean anything. Just don't. Look, I'm taking this from the NHS website. Up to $5,000
Is that
or
what the
more.
NHS website says?
It says, literally say, one cycle of treatment may cost up to £5,000 or more. You could literally save time and energy by saying nothing. It costs an amount.
Or more than that amount.
Think of an amount. It could cost that, but it could cost more. Or less. We don't know. Infuriating. Okay, so how does it work? So there's 6 main stages. I'm going to run through them quickly, and then I'm going to go back through them again, but in slightly more detail. And then again in slightly more detail.
Oh,
and then again and again
Please.
until you know everything.
Yes.
So step 1. You've got to suppress the natural cycle.
I'm doing it. Sorry, keep going.
You did it now.
I was just
You did
suppressing
it.
my natural cycle.
How do you do that?
So you suppress it with medication.
Like the pill?
So yeah, like the pill. Like in the same way that the pill would suppress your natural cycle, this medication suppresses your natural cycle. I can't actually remember the exact medication it is, but it makes you very hormonal.
I thought you were going to say very horny.
Can do. I mean, the people I know, it just made them
I suppose
sad.
very horny is just a type of very hormonal.
Yeah, it just made them bloated and sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, not nice. Like I
No.
You
said,
mean on the pill or just on?
No.
both actually.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
no, on
IVF.
the IVF medication,
Alright.
because freezing your eggs is the same
Process. Which we know people who've had done.
Yes, I know 2 people at least.
Me too.
Up to 2 people or more.
Ah.
Yes.
Yes. Mm.
So you've suppressed your natural cycle. What do you do next?
Take the egg out.
Well, kind of. You boost your natural egg supply, because usually you've only got like 1 egg just kicking about at a time, don't you?
Yes. Although you're born with all your eggs.
You're born with all your eggs, but usually
Isn't that
only one of
cool?
them is.
Really?
You've got all your eggs
So am I
already.
gradually losing eggs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
You've got a
Yes,
finite
getting rid of
supply,
them.
but you do have lots, more
I
than
do
you'll
have-
ever need.
Yes.
Well, you say
How do
that.
you know?
You don't know. Maybe you need to be impregnated by
Maybe I wanna
by
follow
Rachel's
in
granddad
Berthold's-
multiple
No!
times.
No. All I mean is there's like, I think thousands. Like more than you'd ever release in a natural
Yeah,
like,
there's
cycle.
you've got it. Well,
Unless I want to follow in my grandfather's footsteps
Exactly.
and birth my own children, hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah,
I don't think you
unless
have. I
you
don't
were
think
then
you quite
taking the-
have the time.
Unless you were
to do
taking
that.
the egg
I
and then
probably-
putting it in a surrogate mother,
Oh yes.
then you would only have like what, like 40 children
I
maximum?
mean, think about it. 'cause
you underestimate
you've got-
how long I'm planning to live.
No, because you thousands of because you've got 9 months. You've got like a 9-month lead time, and then you want to give yourself a little bit of a break. You can just bang them out like every couple hours, couldn't you?
I don't know if well, I know my body couldn't deal with it, but I don't know if the human body can. Do you think? That,
No, I don't think it
I
can
don't
make
think
more
you
than
could do
like.
that. I don't think you
a
could keep
certain
doing
amount.
it because it's so draining. The
You know, there are people
experience.
that have had like 12 and up babies.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids to have. But this guy, like I said, this guy was just knocking them out. I mean, how many times can you do it in a day?
Oh god,
know?
it must have been so much.
So much.
Because bear in mind that we're just
Sorry, I just had a really clear image in my head of Rachel's grandfather wanking.
yeah. Bear
It
in
is
mind, we all
odd that
have
we're
to think
talking
about
about your
that.
grandfather masturbating.
Well, it's quite funny because the cousins amongst us, like, because it's my dad's half siblings, and we have a group chat called the Hussins, like half cousins. We get people added to it every now and again, and we all have a very similar sense of humor, and we all joke a lot about sperm.
I mean, I guess it's where you come
It's
from,
really,
isn't it?
it's so interesting meeting all of these people though, because we're all so similar.
Although, do you not think the joking about sperm is probably due to the group chat? It's about you guys that are all joined by.
Yeah,
Your granddad
but it's
just
also our
sperm it
family,
out.
isn't that? Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we should all get sperm tattoos. I proposed that in the group chat.
course you did.
Yep. I've had a
How
few.
did it go down?
Yeah, a few people seem up for it,
You should
actually.
start like a secret society.
Oh, yes.
How you recognize each other is
Yes.
by the sperm on your wrist.
It's not very secret that you've
I
mentioned
was
it on
thinking
this
that.
podcast.
Yeah. But they did, yeah. well,
I'm going to get one and join the society.
no.
Oh, we could just get them and
Doing
pretend
it-
that we're part of the group.
You might be a part of the group. Do a DNA test.
I would do a
No.
DNA test, but I don't want the companies having my DNA on file.
You can change your name.
Yeah,
I
you
can
just-
change.
Change what- you can- you don't have to put your
I
real name
can't
on
change
there.
my DNA though.
Yeah, but you can
No.
just give it. You can just write a different name.
Yeah, no, but
Like
then they'll
Noah
still
Adams.
have.
What do you think they're going to do with your DNA? Out of
I don't know.
interest?
Oh,
Great.
well, that's the thing is, so we were talking about this on the podcast a few weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
23andMe have already started selling not DNA data, but findings of DNA data to GlaxoSmithKline. And it's like, that's something that everyone was like, this will happen. And I think they were like, no. And now it has.
Also, I don't want them to clone me because obviously they'd look at my DNA and think, "Wow, what a perfect specimen! Let's make more." And then I'd have competition.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
well,
which
would
is
you really have competition, or would you all form a group?
No, we would not get along with each other. Man, I can't. No,
I
I'm
think.
so insufferable.
No, that's only because you're seeing yourself internally. If you saw yourself externally, you'd be like, I want to be friends with that guy.
You'd think that, but actually, we'd all be competing to be the best person in the room. But we would just, I don't think we'd get on. Yeah,
shame.
it's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame. You got to learn to love yourself.
And your clones.
And yourself.
And
And
yourself.
yourself.
And yourself.
And
And yourself.
Okay, so IVF. Part 2, you boost your egg supply. So more medication is used to make the ovaries produce more eggs than usual.
Hang on. So you suppress your egg supply and then you boost your egg supply.
You want to not so you want to suppress your cycle because part of the cycle is getting rid of it all.
Releasing them.
It's like the cycle normally goes, okay, here is an egg ready to go. Oh, you don't want this egg? Well, then I will tear myself up and destroy myself because screw you. Okay, you're sad now. And then it starts again. Anyway, so part 2 is boosting your egg supply. We've done that. They use medication to make you make more eggs. Part 3, you then monitor your progress and mature your eggs. You let them grow into little adult eggs. Yeah, so that's not
Sounds
true.
like looking after
They
my sea
sprout up.
monkeys.
I thought that sentence was going a completely different way.
Jesus.
So an ultrasound, blah, blah. So they use an ultrasound scan to check the development of the eggs, and then again more medication is used to make them mature. So effectively, they just keep on pumping you full of medication, which makes you feel really hormonal, and it's not a very pleasant experience to go through. So then once that's happened, they've done all of the growing, the maturing, the monitoring. They then collect the eggs by inserting a needle into the ovaries via the vagina to remove the eggs.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Makes
Yeah.
How
Not
else
nice.
would you get there?
I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest.
Yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure that when you're doing this, you've got to inject yourself like in your belly,
Yeah.
with the drugs,
Hang
with the
on.
medication.
So are the eggs at this point still in the ovaries, or are they in the...
They're in the ovaries.
But that's got a corner.
Yeah, but they're growing real big.
Yeah, but it's got a corner.
That's why you got a needle,
That's why you have so much medication beforehand as well.
But it's got... How does the needle go around the corner?
a bendy needle.
Bendy needle.
Oh,
No, they just stick a needle up. I mean, they get it. Okay, it's not nice.
I just wondered if it was in like the like the bag where the baby grows. What's it called again?
Okay, so the bag where the baby grows is the amniotic sac, but you're talking about the uterus.
Yeah.
Which is also where the baby grows, but I wouldn't describe it as a
So
bag.
I wondered if the eggs had made their way down the ovaries into
if
the
they'd done that,
uterus.
they'd attach to the uterine wall and start growing into
Not if you hoover them up before they do it.
How are you going to hoover them up?
With an
with a Hoover.
Oh,
Hoover
with a
needle.
hoover,
Obviously,
obviously. A
yeah.
hoover.
Dyson.
A little Dyson.
Get the Dyson we used to clean our room. That would get them.
You could put like
I
a
miss
straw
that
at the end
Dyson.
of it,
Yeah.
and then attach it,
Yeah.
and then
You got to get like a really fine mesh though to stop them from going into the.
Is this process of having a needle up your vagina sore?
I would imagine you're probably under some pain anesthetic.
Well, I just mean-
Oh, yeah. Sorry. You are put under general anesthetic.
I
Yeah.
think that's
I just wonder why it's painful, because that's because it's a place where you
Oh.
laterally have things go up it, and so it's not going to be a very thick needle. So I wonder, like, what is the
So-
pain coming from?
Well, sorry. When I said it hurts. It hurts because the eggs are growing so large in the ovaries.
it's just a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry. Yeah. That's what hurts. The
Okay.
needle doesn't. You're under anesthetic. Okay, so you've collected the eggs. Now you need to fertilize the eggs. So you just mix them up with the sperm for a few days to allow them to be fertilized.
Wow.
And then you transfer the embryos or embryo, 1 or 2 fertilized eggs, into the womb. which is the uterus, which is where the babies grow.
Mm.
Yeah. So, like you said, it is more than one egg, but sometimes it isn't. It just depends how many are fertilized and how many are good.
So it's up to one egg, but sometimes more.
Yeah, up to one egg or more. So once the embryo has been transferred, so it says on the NHS website, once the embryo has been transferred into your womb, you'll need to wait 2 weeks before taking a pregnancy test to see if the treatment has worked.
Fun fact about pregnancy tests, you can wee on them as a male,
Ah, yes.
and for some types of testicular cancer, it will show you're pregnant.
Wow.
I did this.
Did you?
Inconclusive results.
Hang on. Did pregnancy tests have inconclusive as an option?
Well, yeah, I couldn't pee enough.
Wait,
Yeah.
what?
I did it in a video. We can link the video.
I don't want to see you weeing on a pregnancy test.
It's perfectly
I do.
fine. I just only got a little
I
bit on my
wanna know.
hands.
Yeah, apparently it's not particularly it's not like reliable as a perfect test, but it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. It was very fun to do.
Yeah.
So just a little more detail on the steps. This one is for the egg owner, the female. The NHS says the women, but that's not very inclusive. So you give you're given the medication that's going to suppress your cycle. That is either daily injections that you do yourself in the belly, which isn't very pleasant, or a nasal spray. Why would you have both? Why not just use the nasal spray for
Is
everyone?
it less effective?
I mean, maybe.
Wow, nasal spray or injections. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it seems
Seems a
seems
little-
like if
Because
you
the
have
contrast there.
walls of your nostrils are really thin, and they're an easy way to get stuff into your bloodstream.
Ah.
yeah, just like your booty.
Just like your booty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You pop up there.
Oh, no. I was going to say.
But yeah, I just feel like once you've made the nasal spray, that's kind of maybe stop doing the injections. Once that's there, you don't need them
Maybe
anymore.
it's cheaper.
Probably is cheaper. Yeah. So you do that for about 2 weeks. Then once it's suppressed, you start using follicle stimulating hormone, which is another daily injection, which you use for about 10 to 12 days. So that increases the number of eggs that your ovaries produce, and that means you can just get more eggs. Then step 3, when you check the progress, they keep an eye on the treatment, the clinicians, and you have vaginal ultrasound scans to monitor your ovaries, and in some cases you get blood tests as well. And then about 34 to 38 hours before, up to 34 or more hours before your eggs are due to be collected, you have one last hormone injection that helps your eggs to mature. And then they're collected, so you get sedated, and they'll use a needle that goes, dear Lord,
God.
that goes through the vagina into each ovary, like using ultrasound to guide it. Cool. So it takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and some people get cramps or some vaginal bleeding after the procedure.
Ow.
Yeah, not very nice. And then step 5, they fertilize the eggs, so they mix with the sperm for about 16 to 20 hours, and then they will sometimes have to inject each egg individually with sperm. So sometimes they'll mix it all together, and other times they'll literally just get a needle and kind of...
That's not very good, because then you don't get to have like the fittest sperm win.
Well, they can test what the fittest sperm is. I'll tell you how they do that later on.
They can test what the fittest sperm is. They,
I'll-
have a little race.
No. Well, that is generally what happens.
No, I know, but
like
do they have
Ascot.
like an artificial sperm race?
I'll tell you what they do.
Finishing line and everything.
Starting pistol.
Yeah, starting.
Tiny little starting pistol.
You get the
So-
audience on the sides. Going,
The embryos actually grow in the
Just
lab.
like in the vagina.
Dear Lord, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
It's how it works.
So the embryos grow in the library for the embryos grow in the
In the Labrador.
Labrador.
Library.
They grow.
In the library.
The embryos grow in the laboratory for up to 6 days before being put into the womb, which is quite a lot longer than I thought. So if you're a test tube baby, you were first grown in a laboratory for about 6 days, almost a week, which is amazing. So like you actually existed outside of a womb before you existed inside of one. It's amazing.
I suppose you sort of came from inside of two other things, though, didn't you?
I think
No,
your dad
because you
came
weren't a thing
inside-
until you were fertilized.
That's true.
Yeah. So after the egg collection, you're given more hormones to help prepare your womb for receiving an embryo, and that's usually given either as a pessary placed inside the vagina,
As a what?
something that you put in your vagina, like a suppository. yeah.
Like a pill.
Yeah.
Cool.
An injection or a gel.
Hmm.
So I know which one I would prefer.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want to have a pill put up your vagina, would you, Corey?
Really wouldn't know.
No.
Much no,
Sign me up.
Daddy.
for putting a pill up my vagina.
Gonna, yep.
So
Rachel could administer it.
no,
I could do it.
please don't.
I'm certified.
You'll have trouble finding it. I'll tell you that.
Certified as what?
You know, a pill push-up. No.
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 So a few days after the eggs are collected, the embryos are then put into the womb. They use a thin tube. You probably know what it's called, a catheter. And they put that in the vagina and just pop them up in. It's much easier than collecting the eggs because you don't need to go into the ovaries. It's kind of like a cervical screening test,
Right.
which isn't necessarily pleasant, but you don't need to be sedated for it. So you have like 1 or 2 embryos put inside.
Or more.
1 or 2. Up to 1 or 2 or more.
That's even better. Up to 1 or 2 or more.
So that is the procedure for the egg owner, which is obviously quite long and laborious. Now we need to go into obviously the other part of this, which is
Rachel's granddad.
Well, no, which is almost equally as long and laborious. This is for the sperm owner. So around about the same time that your partner's eggs are collected, you'll be asked to produce a fresh sperm sample.
How do you do that, Corey?
Luke, I know for a fact that you don't know how to do this. So the sperm are washed and spun at a high speed so that the healthiest and most active sperm can be selected.
Sorry, what?
Oh,
They
hold on,
are
wait.
washed and spun.
And then, if you're using donated sperm, it's thawed before being prepared in the same way, and that is it. That's it.
It's spun around.
Yeah. So they
That's like how Declan made his album cover.
Yeah.
it was
like-
spun around.
In a centrifuge.
Yeah, it's like in a centrifuge. So that
What a horrible start to life as a sperm.
well, it's so the strongest,
fun.
may the fittest survive. You know.
Yeah, but the fittest, not in like a centrifuge.
Man, imagine how strong those sperm have got to be.
Yeah.
Most sperm
Gotta
just
be
have to
ripped.
swim through a vagina. No, these sperm have got to be like spun. Oh wow, I love these guys. But yeah, it's much easier for if you're just given some sperm rather than growing a baby inside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can choose, I would choose the sperm option. You know, if you had to choose between the two of them.
Well, you'd have to choose before birth, but sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, are we choosing art?
Sorry?
What?
So Corey was saying, if you could choose whether to be a male or a female in the IVF situation, choose being a male. Unhelpful
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, that's probably true. If
Yeah.
you could choose.
If you could
I
choose.
guess.
So how was IVF invented?
Well, Rachel,
How was
how's
IVF invented?
Well, I don't know if it was invented like per se by this.
It
but
wasn't.
I did, yeah, it
No, it
was
wasn't.
one of the leading researchers in artificial insemination. I'm aware of that.
Go on, Corey,
Do you
tell
want
us.
to-
You
yeah.
tell me.
No worries, I'll tell you. So
and I'll tell you what I know about Berthold. Otherwise,
that's fine. So the first ever IVF treatment was done properly in 1978. Well, the first baby was born in 1978.
1978.
Yeah, is that earlier or later?
This
than
is
you expected?
later. 1940 was when this clinic was opened.
Oh yeah, because this is the thing. That's about artificial insemination.
Yeah.
This is about IVF.
IVF, right.
Which came from artificial insemination.
Right.
Just like all the sperm
Yes.
came from your
Different
granddad.
process.
So is the thing
All
that
the
your
people.
granddad was doing, is that just like getting some sperm and essentially like a squidgy thing and
Turkey baster.
Squishing it up.
Squeezing them up.
right. So your grandfather was just taking samples
Yeah.
and putting them in a person
Yeah.
for them to naturally in the standard way fertilize an egg.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
So the reason we're talking about IVF today is because you've just explained the entirety of artificial insemination in a sentence.
right.
But so artificial insemination did actually lead into IVF. And also it's much harder to do what your granddad did with IVF than it is
Yes.
with artificial
Yeah.
insemination.
Yeah. That's a lot more processes going on.
And a
there,
lot more
I think.
people getting their hands in on that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, what was interesting about Berthold is that his wife Mary Barton was also in charge of the clinic with him, so she was
Yeah.
like willingly doing all of this.
yeah, have you going to say something else?
No, keep going.
So what I was going to say is that they were supposedly they were working together on this, and the idea was that they would get sperm from intelligent friends of theirs,
Yes.
but they couldn't get enough. So he just kind of filled up all the spaces. He was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I get all.
What was there? Is there any indication of what their motive was? Because obviously, if it was Berthold's own
Wiesner.
sperm, then he has a genetic advantage and like motivation for propagating his own genes. But if he's just getting intelligent people he knows, Is it that he wants loads of intelligent people to exist?
Money.
Money? But why didn't he
Money.
just take the person's, like...
Because it's
Okay.
yeah, because it was a sperm. It was also a sperm bank. It was
So
a
this is for
fertility.
not necessarily just people who can't conceive a child. It's people who don't have a partner to conceive a child with as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if you can't conceive a so for instance, if say a man or a sperm owner was infertile, then you would get sperm from the
Yes.
clinic.
Yes.
So he would provide that.
Right.
Quite literally would
Yes.
provide it.
Okay,
Jesus.
well, this is slightly different to what I thought was going on, which was that I thought that he was basically swapping out the sperm, like unbeknownst to the... But he was, though, as well.
Well, this is the thing. It's
don't
because
know.
we don't know, because every case that has been discovered so far has been so individual. You know, like it's been so dependent on the people involved, and because it was also the 1940s, like we've lost a lot of that information, especially when people didn't know what was happening at the time. I know that and we've filmed a documentary about this recently. One of my uncles, my new uncle's he's called Barry Stevens. He's very cool. He's made a biopic about Bertold before. I think it's called biopic. It's not a biopic. He made a documentary about
Technically,
Bertold.
it is a biopic. Because it's about biology.
It's called Biodad.
Ah.
And anyway, we were interviewed on it recently, and my grandmother was interviewed, and she was talking about what she remembered. And when we first found out, she was shocked. She didn't understand what had happened, because we think that she actually just had repressed the memory of it, because she said that she had no memory of it for a very long time. And then she said that she thought it was because not my biological grandfather, my dad's adoptive father.
Your assumed grandfather.
She assumed it was because he was infertile after the war. So, and she thought that perhaps, or this is what she said to us at least, they had frozen my grandfather's sperm and then artificially inseminated it in her. So she thought, or she had taught herself to believe that was the case, that, you know, he was my dad's biological dad, not Bertold,
your granddad.
my granddad.
So we can. Let's just call them your granddad and Bertold.
My granddad and Bertold, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I've understood this correctly, it's very possible that at the time this happened, your
Yeah.
grandmother knew what was going on.
Yes.
And then she has suppressed the memory and convinced herself that actually it was her husband's sperm
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
in order to not be repressing that information her whole life from her children.
Yes. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
potential. It's potential that my grandfather and Bertold actually knew each other. She says she remembers meeting him. She says that when she was at the clinic, they also gave her a pill for the common cold. Not sure what that was about.
Seeing as there is no pill.
There's
for
no
the
pill.
Yes, there
for
is
the
no pill
common
for the common
cold.
cold.
Weird.
Yeah.
Was
It's all very
your
strange.
gran just taking whatever people gave her?
She's probably having a good time, you know, bouncing about.
Oh wow.
Well, it's quite interesting because this process was obviously it was illegal, you know, at the time. So it was a sort of hidden
What?
clinic. The process, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't something that was
Really?
talked about. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's not
it
what I
all
was.
done.
So what I was reading was, and this is the thing, is you are right. There is very little on it. So the first article is from 2012, and what everything I read about it was that it wasn't necessarily legal so much as it was frowned upon. So if you got it done, you wouldn't tell anyone, and if people started to find out, then reporters would be calling you, and people might look down on you. So generally, if it happened, you wouldn't tell anyone. It's kind of like in the same. Apparently, it's viewed. It was viewed then in the same way that human cloning is viewed now.
Oh wow. Just
Hang on. But we don't have any human clones.
Yes, but human cloning is a thing that's entirely possible. And the reason that we don't have it is because it's it's ethically frowned upon.
But is it possible to create a human clone?
Yeah, we did a whole episode on it
Hang on. But how do we know it's possible if we've never done it?
because we did it on a sheep.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
probably
no.
don't
But
know.
the sheep died early. It wasn't like a very...
Yeah, but you can still clone a full, and we've
Sure.
cloned a bunch of mammals, and also we've cloned human cells.
Okay, so you mean when you say it's viewed in the way that human cloning is viewed, you mean that scientifically human cloning is frowned upon, not societally
No,
human.
societally,
But we don't have societally
scientifically
Yes.
we're being held back from from the potentials of human cloning
yeah.
because
Because of the
societally
ethics,
it's morally seen as not
It's just
not
frowned
ideal.
upon, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite frowned upon,
Yes.
which then holds back the science of it.
Okay.
Because the societal moral values then influence the laws and regulation, which then influence what science can actually study. And so that's what I mean. In the same way that if you were to tell someone, "Oh yes, I just had my son cloned," they'd be like, "What the hell is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Oh, I think people would be like, that's really cool.
Well, we'd be like, "It's
We'd
really
be-
cool," but then we
Very
do a
open-minded.
science podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're entirely right. It might not have been illegal, but definitely was not something that was talked about or encouraged. So it was all very secretive.
So two people that I found who are who are they? I can actually figure this out. They are probably they're both your half uncles.
Yes.
So there's Barry Stevens.
Yep.
He's a Canadian filmmaker, and David. Dear Lord, David Golanks.
Yes, I don't
Who
know
is
how
a
to pronounce
barrister.
his surname either, but he's great. Both of them are wonderful.
Really?
Yeah, I met them recently. We've been having these small family gatherings. I say small; it's not small. There's many.
I mean, there's many of you. Yeah, that's really interesting because you know, this is the thing. This is, I think, the first time we've ever had a, let's call it a first-hand source, because you are effectively a first-hand source here. This is the first time we've had an actual first-hand source to one of our stories in the room with us. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's so strange being in this lizard family because you do never know who might be your cousin or
That
your
is so
uncle.
true.
And yeah,
I suppose it must be similar to being adopted, except when you find your family, you find a lot more family than
Yeah.
you'd expect.
oh yeah, completely. It actually took me. It was a big shock, actually. Much more for my dad, I think. I can't really speak too much on his behalf, but I know that it was very strange for him. But for me personally, like it's changed how I view myself because I thought that I was a quarter Polish because that was where my grandfather was from, but I'm now a quarter Austrian because that's where Bertold is from.
Yeah.
So I look at it like that, and then my middle name, one of my middle names is Sydney, which was the name of my grandfather. But obviously, there's a slight disconnect there now. It doesn't matter, obviously,
Yeah.
because family is who you consider family.
Yeah,
but it is interesting
absolutely.
to look at it from the biological sense to think what might my life had been like. That's not
Yeah,
the
no.
right.
What might my life have been like?
What
What might-
what might my life
have been like?
have been like?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna scrap that sentence.
No, go for it.
What my life may have been like if I had known this before, or my dad had known this before. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's the thing. Anyone listening right now,
It could be you.
It could be you. Go out and get
Yeah.
yourself tested. Genuinely,
Yeah,
find
yeah,
out.
yeah.
You might find yourself in a little group chat with Kiki
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Come join us. We have very silly jokes.
and very spermy tattoos.
Yeah, very spermy tattoos. Very spermy tattoos. Right on the forehead.
Wow, yeah, there's no hiding that. That's amazing, though. I mean, it is incredible. So yeah, what I find out about Wiesner, as you say it in German. So he was Austrian, as you said. He was a biologist, and he ended up providing 2/3 of the sperm from the clinic, which is a lot. So nowadays, so nowadays you're not allowed to do that. But back in the time, there wasn't really any regulation on it because it wasn't really something that was done. So the reason that you obviously don't want people, I mean, beating one out a lot is because
Jesus.
what is the,
SCI guys.
well, the reason you don't want them doing that is because obviously the more children you sire that don't, grow up together in the same family, the higher the chance is that they'll meet each other and then
Mate.
produce their own child. And that could then lead to complications with those children, and ultimately, just it's effectively incest, unintentional incest.
Yeah, Rachel's gonna have to get tested, aren't you?
I'm gonna have to test all my potential partners.
You would have to.
I genuinely would have to.
Imagine that, right? You go back for after like a fun night, and
Rachel whips out a DNA test
Hold
and
on, let me
makes you
just-
wait 2 to 3 weeks.
let me just slip into something a little more comfortable. While you wait, why don't you take this little DNA test?
Spit in this tube for me.
Let me swab you. That's insane that you've now got to do that, given your family history.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
It's fascinating because I just don't know how big it's gonna get. You know?
Yeah, that's the thing, because this only came out in 2012. So when
yeah.
did your dad find out?
We found out about 10 months ago, something like
That
that.
recent?
Yeah, it might have been a year
Wow.
ago. Yeah.
So about 7 or 8 years after the story broke. Then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think just everyone in the UK should be tested. That's the thing. But that is the thing, though. I mean, it was
It's
about
not even just the UK though. Like I have so much family who are in Australia.
wow.
I've got family all across the globe.
So DNA tests were conducted on 18 of the people that were conceived at the clinic between 1943 and 1962. And 2/3 of them were fathered by the same man, which is unbelievable. Over that amount of time. And I mean, 18 people, it's not very many, but still, it's a considerable enough number that 2/3 of them shared the same dad. And then obviously, if you extrapolate that out, that gives you about 600 kids
600 uncles.
600 uncles.
Yep.
Yeah.
or aunties.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
600
no,
uncles has a
we're
good...
going to make a podcast called 600 Uncles
Yeah.
about this very thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, you should make it. You should make that.
And then if they all have an average of 2.3 children,
What?
Oh, wow.
I'd like to get them on actually.
1,500
You have to
children.
get every single one of them on.
Be good to do another follow up with this in the future when we've got more information. I can bring some of the cousins or some of them.
Oh, that would be lovely.
I reckon you could do your own podcast called 600 Uncles where you interview a different member of your extended family every week about what they do.
Yeah.
That'd be
That
great.
Could literally, it could last
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
Thousands of weeks of content
it's
with the cousins as
fascinating
well.
And also, they have kids, and then the kids have
Oh,
kids,
yeah,
and the kids
yeah.
have kids, have kids, have
Yeah.
kids. You could pass it down to your children. There you go, set for
Perfect.
life.
A new media empire.
600 Uncles, the collective.
So we've got some expert here who has told us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So no. I mean, so,
I am here.
no. Alan Pacey, who's the chairman of the British Fertility Society and an expert in male fertility, said that a healthy man could make that many donations in a year if it were legal, which is about 20 donations a year. So 20 sperm donations, which is apparently very easy for a man to do if he's a healthy man. So
And what's your source for that, Corey?
I told you, Alan Pacey, chairman of the British Fertility Society, and not at all from me in my own bedroom. Quiet, Luke.
I was going to say, Alan Pacey's a strange name for one of your hands.
Well, this is Alan Pacey, and this is Alan Gentle. So quite luckily, before any of this broke, in 1990, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act set up a regulator of fertility clinics, and limits were set on the number of families a sperm donor could provide for. A sperm or egg donor. So the reason it's families is because you don't want a family want to have multiple children, and then being told, "Oh no, your sperm donor hit their quota, so you have to get another one."
So
After
then
you've
you
already
have
had
half
two
children.
kids. Yeah.
The half siblings.
Yeah, which is not really an issue, but for families that want to have all their kids, come from the same bloke, it's a nice little thing that they added in there. It was smarter than I expected the law to be. So nowadays this couldn't happen unless it was super illegal and super underground. But yeah, that's kind of the story of how artificial insemination grew into IVF and also grew into one of the biggest families in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost Genghis Khan levels of child siring.
Very close, yes.
Yeah. So just some more little rules for being a sperm donor. You got to be between 18 and 41, and you got to test your samples.
Ding.
That's us.
Yes, me too.
Let's get some money, man.
Yeah. And actually, they keep information on the donor so that when the child turns 18, they can contact them and find out about all their half siblings, which is really nice. And around 2,000 children are born every year using donated eggs, sperm, or embryos.
That's not as many as I thought. Is that worldwide?
In Britain.
Okay.
In Britain. So that's quite a few. I mean, I don't know how many babies are born in Britain every year, but 2,000 is more than zero.
Yes.
Up to 2,000 or more. Do you have any parting thoughts for this, Kiki? Do you want to give us any insight into your family life?
Everyone's crazy. When the family is in a room together, nobody can stop talking. Everyone's just talking over each other. It is the loudest, most warm group of people that I've ever been around.
That's amazing. It's amazing to find. It's almost as though I suppose it's like finding family.
Yeah.
In the same way that you'd find family in your friends, except these people are actually biologically related, despite the fact that you've not grown up together. It's very, very interesting. Something that not many people would get to have.
It's a very strange
It's like
experience.
a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
I think it'd be like a Christmas movie.
They actually did make a movie about this, I think, with
Wow.
Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. I think
Was it
so.
actually about this?
I don't know.
No, it was a Vince Vaughn movie where he fathered many, many children, and then he had to become the dad of all of them.
Maybe the writer. Oh, what? He'd become the dad of all of them.
You had to be like
sounds like loads of fun.
Yeah, it was a rollicking good time, I'll tell you that.
Was it called something like Big Daddy?
It was,
Oh,
no,
God.
I think it was called the dad. Who's your daddy or something? Hold on, let's find out.
Who's your daddy?
Vince Vaughn. It's called Delivery Man. Because an affable underachiever finds out he's fathered 533 children through anonymous donations to a fertility clinic 20 years ago. And now he must come to decide whether or not to come forward when 142 of them file a lawsuit to reveal his identity.
Brilliant.
Not gonna lie, the entire time reading that story, I was just thinking about that film. Maybe your granddad is Vince Vaughn.
Oh, God, he might be.
How do you know? You don't know.
Well, the DNA says otherwise, but
Have you got Vince Vaughn's DNA?
I do not.
Did you have Vince Vaughn take a DNA test?
No, but
Did
maybe
your
that
father
should be
take
the
a
next
paternity
step.
test with Vince Vaughn? Imagine if your dad's dad was Vince Vaughn.
I don't know if that would work
You don't
chronologically.
Know you don't know
No.
Rachel's dad, but the idea that Rachel's dad came out of Vince Vaughn is really strange.
Okay, well, that is the show, I think. Yeah, you had a good time, Kiki?
I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
We should have you on another time, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have you on next week. Why don't we do that?
Can't wait.
Thank you for watching. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Sunday, and why not leave us a nice wee comment? You can find and contact us at SciGuysPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or send us an email at sciguyspod@gmail.com.
That's sciguyspod@gmail.com.
SciGuysPod.
At gmail.com. You can follow me at NotCorey everywhere.
And Rachel Kiki _.
I'm Luke Cupforth everywhere.
That's it. Goodbye.
Thank you.